Okay, y'all, so now that we've talked about the requirements for filing and whether we have to even file and what our dependent status is, what our filing status is, we're ready to move on to the 1040, and this is the exciting part because this is where you're actually doing your taxes now, right? So we're going to start figuring out where the different dollar amounts are going. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go line by line through this entire 1040. So there's going to be several different videos. Now you could jump around if you're comfortable with some of the areas, or you can just watch this as part of a playlist. Either way, I suggest subscribing to this channel so that way you can go ahead and follow along, especially as I continue to post new videos every other day on these long videos. So what we're starting out with is line 1, 1040. Now when we're looking at line 1, 1040, what we're dealing with is W-2 driven. This is when you work for another person and you're getting that W-2 amount. So we're going to have our W-2 and we're going to follow the W-2 and we're going to enter that information. Now we're going to take a look to see what kind of information, what kind of income will go in that first line. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that situation. I'm also going to show you a table that's going to show you things that do not go in the 1040, but where taxpayers try to put some of that information. So we're going to make that clear for you as well. Now, even if you're not using a paper 1040, and gosh, most people don't use a paper 1040 anymore. They're using some kind of system, right? Maybe it's free or whatever it is. And they're not saying, hey, what amount do you want to put in line 1 for a 1040? It's still putting that information in those proper areas. So we still need to know what the IRS is seeking, even if we're using a system that's not asking specifically for line 1. And then when it prints out the return, we also need to be able to look at the return to understand our taxes so we can better tax plan for future years and be able to retain more of our money instead of just paying it off in taxes if we, legally, if we're able to minimize our taxes. So let's go ahead and first take a look at what belongs on line 1 in our 1040. So when we're looking at the line 1, like I said, this is W-2 driven. Here's what you're looking at. You're looking at your W-2 wages, just your normal wages, but it's going to include things like salaries, right? So you're going to have your salaries on here. You're going to have your tips. The tips that are reported on the W-2 are going to go here as well. You're going to have bonuses, overtime pay, and severance pay. Now, I do want to point out a couple things. Your salaries and your overtime are still going on line 1, but under the most recent tax revisions, what we have is an additional deduction out there that you're able to take, or a deduction for your tips and for overtime pay, for certain portions of your overtime pay, depending on whether you qualify. I have a full video that walks you through some of the changes in the code. This is going to go on your Schedule 1A, so that way you'll see where those things go. And I will do a video on the Schedule 1A, so you'll be able to see how we actually apply it to the 1A. All right, so that's the type of income you have. But what I need to show you, and it's easier to understand what goes on line 1, if I show you a table of items that do not appear on line 1. So let's take a look at that. So if you have this type of income, do not put it on line 1. You can see where they go. Many of them are going in schedules or they appear on other lines. So it's important to be able to distinguish between those. And of course, I'm going to be doing a video on each of these lines and each of these schedules, so you're going to have access to that so you can get more information on them. But some of the things that are not appearing on line 1 is going to be side hustle income. So if you have a side hustle there, you're self-employed, right? So if you're self-employed, you know what? Schedule C. It goes on your Schedule C. If you have rental income, that's passive income. We go to Schedule E. Now, these schedules from Schedule E to Schedule E, they're eventually going to come back to our 1040, so they're going to appear there. It's just not in line 1. And so we start out with Schedule C and Schedule E, and then Schedule 1s, and they make their way back. So we have interest income. So that's going to be line 2. Dividend income, line 3. Okay, so they have their own little areas on the 1040. So the next one we're going to be talking about is interest income. Then we're going to get into dividend income. So we're going to have a video that deals exclusively with those and how we handle those and those types of situations. Gambling winnings, Schedule 1. That's where that one's going to appear. Your gambling winnings is Schedule 1, other income. All right, unemployment is still taxable, but it goes to Schedule 1. So those things are going to be Schedule 1, and they're going to eventually be brought over to the 1040, but they do not appear on line 1. That is your W-2 employee-driven type of income that appears there. All right, well, let's go on now that we know what's not actually appearing on that, and let's look at our next section. So when you're filling out your line 1, you may be looking at your W-2 trying to figure out, okay, wait, what box is going where? What, I have all these different boxes that I have to deal with. Do I deal with the highest amount? Right? Is that the one that I put on line 1? The answer is going to be no. Go to box 1. It's always going to be box 1. That includes your wages, tips, and compensation. That's your taxable wages. And certain things have already been excluded from it, right? So your before tax contributions and those types of things, that's already been taken care of. So that's already reduced it. So that's why you're going to box 1. Now, box 3, that's used for Social Security wages. So there's a different base that you're dealing with because there's a different threshold and different things go inside there. Then you have your Medicare wages. So that includes pre-tax differences. So that's a little bit different. That's box 5. Box 5 is oftentimes higher than like a box 1 or a box 3. So don't just go say, oh, box 5, everything's taxable. No, you don't want to overpay. Don't put box 5 there. You need to put box 1. Okay, that's the amount that you're dealing with. And then box 2 is going to be federal withholdings. How much have you paid in federal taxes already? So that's where box 2 is. So you certainly don't want to put that one either. So when you're dealing with line 1 on your 1040, take your W-2, go to box 1. That's what you're going to be entering. All right. Well, let's talk about what happens if you have more than one job. You're working for 2 employees. That's becoming more common these days, right? Or you're married filing jointly and your spouse has a W-2 as well. How do we handle those situations? Do we file multiple returns? If we're married, does our spouse have to file their own returns even if we're filing jointly? So the answer is going to be no. Let's go ahead and take a look at that, though. I'm going to bring up a table for you. All right, so what we're going to take a look at now is what happens if we have more than one W-2 or we're filing jointly with our spouse. What's going to happen there? Then in the next table, what I want to do is show you some things for audit risk management so you can kind of see what could trigger perhaps an audit on this. But hey, if these videos are helping you, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel. I'm posting a new long video line by line through our 1040 and our important schedules. So that way you're prepared for tax season. So that way you can continue to get updates as this information is posted. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So if you have one spouse has a W-2, then that's easy. Or if you're single, you just take your W-2 and you put it on line 1. But life isn't always simple. Sometimes things get a little bit more complicated. So let's say that we're married and now we have 2 or multiple W-2s. All we do is it all goes together on one 1040. They're all added together and it appears, so all box 1 on your W-2s are going to be added together and it's all going to appear on line 1 of the 1040. You're not filing multiple returns or 1040s or anything like that. It's just added together and that's where it's going to appear. And the same thing occurs if what we're looking at is if we have one spouse that has multiple W-2s, all right, then in that situation, we're going to also just add up the amounts and they're all going to appear on our 1040. All right, well, before we go on to another video and start looking at line 2 and line 3 of our 1040, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the management on this and audit risks. So even though you're filling out these forms and there's going to be information filings that are provided to the IRS, such as a W-2, they're going to have that W-2. And then when you file your tax return and you're looking at line 1, your W-2 may not specifically match up with what the IRS has. Hey, and that doesn't mean that you specifically did anything wrong. It could be an issue. It could be something like, oh, I accidentally put box 5, which is higher than what I should have put for box 1, and you put the incorrect amount. So those types of things can occur. But other times what happens is when you have multiple W-2s, right, you're compiling those together, so the amounts that you're actually putting on your 1040 may not match what's on your W-2, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong. And the way that it's set up is the W-2 is attached to usually your Social Security number, so they can tell how much should be being reported in there. So it's nothing to necessarily panic about. All right, subscribe to this channel if this video has been helping you, and go ahead and watch the next video when we talk about line 2.